But let's kick off the hour with this one. Extraordinary stuff. There is little evidence that paternalism delivers better health outcomes. According to new research, governments are increasingly adopting higher sin taxes and more prohibitions, according to the 2021 Nanny State Index compiled by the Institute for Economic Affairs, whose head of lifestyle economics, Christopher Snowdon, joins me now. Hi, Christopher.
Hi, Mark.
So this is bad news for big states.
Oh, I think the big states will probably be all right, regardless of what I say. But we've been doing this now for 5 years. This is actually the 4th edition. We do it every 2 years these days. It's 30 countries in Europe, and we rank them for their kind of excessive paternalistic regulation of eating, soft drinks, alcoholic drinks, vaping, and smoking. And basically, the short capsule summary is that it's getting worse nearly everywhere. Germany is a rare exception, actually. It comes bottom across every criteria. It's really quite a free country. Norway is right at the top as the biggest nanny state. We're actually 12th. We've slipped down from 4th, which might surprise people in this country because nothing's got more liberal in recent years. But a lot of other countries, particularly in Eastern Europe, have got much less liberal. And we have to be fair. We have frozen alcohol duty the last few years. That's helped a little bit, get us down the table. And also we have fairly sensible regulation of e-cigarettes. It's the one kind of good spot about UK nanny state is they tend to leave vapors alone, whereas a lot of European countries are including vaping in smoking bans. They're banning flavors in some countries. They're taxing e-cigarette fluid. We don't do that here, thank God.
So sin taxes just don't deliver better public health seems to be the message.
Well, it's not just sin taxes. Yeah, taxes and bans, really. There's minimum pricing for alcohol, for example, smoking bans, obviously, for smoking, all sorts of different regulations. There's, I think, 35 different taxes or regulations in the index, over 1,000 pieces of information altogether. And then once we've collated all that, you can look at the overall score for the nanny state, see if that correlates with life expectancy. It doesn't. Places at the bottom of the table like Luxembourg and Germany, perfectly healthy countries, pretty nice countries, I think most people would say.
Yep.
But they haven't got much of the kind of regulation that you see in places like Scandinavia, Britain, a lot of Eastern Europe. And you can do it the same kind of thing with the tobacco score. So just look at all the tobacco scores together. Have the countries with the most regulation got the lowest smoking rates? No. Do the same thing with the alcohol scores. Have the countries with the highest alcohol scores, the biggest temperance policies, got the lowest drinking rates or the lowest rates of alcohol related harm? No, they haven't. And so on. I mean, that's the basic thrust of it, is that this stuff doesn't actually seem to be having the intended consequence, but it has lots of unintended consequences in terms of, for example, sin taxes making people poorer. They hit the poor hardest. Yeah. Various regulations raise up costs. In some instances, you get black market activity. One of the few times we actually see countries liberalizing is when they tend to see a lot of people crossing the border. So countries like Estonia and Finland, Latvia, there's a lot of cross-border trade there, where one country puts up the price of something, people tend to scoot over the border, and then the government has to quietly kind of row that tax back a little bit. But that's really the only time that governments do row things back, when they're actually losing money.
Things like sugar taxes, then the taxes on sugary drinks, fast food, I mean, that will penalise poorer families because they continue to consume those products and it will just make them poorer.
Yeah, it does. And the sugar tax is not a particularly high tax if you compare it to taxes on spirits or cigarettes. But, it still takes money out of people's pockets. I think you'd have to be a fairly heavy consumer of sugary drinks to be spending more than £50 on the tax alone, but it's still £50 I'd rather see in a hardworking family's pockets and in the government's pocket. So yeah, these taxes are regressive. The government makes an enormous amount of money, as I'm sure you know. It's about £25 billion it makes out of sin taxes from sugary drinks, alcohol and tobacco alone.
What about COVID? We've been very exposed to the worst of the virus, Christopher, haven't we, given the poor state of national health we have in this country, particularly obesity and what they call metabolic disorder, which is a mixture of obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease and type 2 diabetes. So we do need to get sort of fitter and healthier. What's the best way to achieve it if it's not sin taxes and these restrictions?
I honestly don't know. I get asked that question quite a lot because I tend to be on the radio opposing various nanny state measures. I can't honestly think, if we're going to have a reasonably affluent and reasonably free country, I can't think what can be done about it. Other than just encouraging people to exercise and maybe this calorie count idea is not a bad idea. Maybe giving people information
yeah,
how much energy is in certain foods.
Yeah. Information, let people decide, Christopher. I think that's interesting because we saw that with smoking, that when smokers began to realize that the fags weren't great for you, they were able to make a decision to quit rather than just being priced out of the market.
Yeah, that was when you actually saw the biggest drop in smoking rates between 1950, when the first evidence came out about smoking and lung cancer, and around about 1980 or so. Really big drop in the smoking rate then, without really very much nanny state activity at all, relatively low tax rates even in those days. And then over the course of the last 15 years, we have seen the rise of vaping, and that's definitely had an impact, but we've seen a huge amount of very authoritarian stuff really going up to plain packaging, as well as the smoking ban, which, as the index shows, is actually the most draconian in Europe, in the United Kingdom, and that's had less of an effect. And you do, I think, get diminishing returns with any of this kind of stuff. Eventually you get down to a hardcore bunch of people who really enjoy doing what they're doing. They will make sacrifices in other areas to continue doing it. So you're just banging people over the head. And you have to use increasingly oppressive measures, increasingly illiberal measures. And at the end of the day, what is the point? At some stage, you just have to accept that people should be free to live their lives as they choose.
Christopher, amen to that. It's a fantastic report. You can go to the IEA's website for more information. Christopher Snowdon is there.